Hello, my name's Craig Prawl, and today I'm going to be doing a little video while I'm doing a little bit of investigation on my main gaming system, which is one I built myself. It's the first water-cooled system that I built, and when I built it, I used a PrimoChill Pro PV Ice, or PC Ice, UV blue, and something over the last 9 months, the blue has gone actually to clear, and I know from watching some other videos um, that some of the dyes or some of the coolants, especially the solid ones, tend to gunk up their systems after a while, and that can cause some issues. This particular blue, which I don't know how well I can make it so that you can see it, um, is actually just dyed. It's not actually a solid coolant. It's actually just dyed water with all the little bits and pieces in it to make it so that it doesn't grow algae and all that stuff. All that stuff's all pre-mixed, so I didn't have to do any extra work. This is a picture of my system from September 2019 with the tempered glass off, so you can get a good idea of what the blue looked like. And you can see it's nice medium blue. It matches the cables reasonably well at this point. And this is what I was starting from. This is the original color. And so now in July of 2020, this is what the system looks like with the tempered glass off. As you can see, there doesn't appear to be any blue whatsoever left in this liquid. And it is still full of liquid. I'm not having any problems with temps, but as you can tell, it doesn't match those cables anymore. And next step is to try and figure out where did the blue go. So I'm going to drain the system and see if I see any blue coming out of the radiator, any blue clumps, anything coming out of the reservoir. But right now it's still kind of a mystery. I'm not sure where the blue went. But the first step is just to get this off the wall and start draining it. So the first step for me to drain this system is I'm going to put the feet back on the bottom. Normally this is a wall-mounted system. With the tempered glass on and the water in it, it weighs about 56 pounds, so it's a little hard to just pick it up and move it around. With the glass off, it's maybe 10 pounds lighter, but it's still pretty hard to move. So I'm going to put the feet on just so it's easier to turn from side to side, because that makes it a lot easier to get the water to drain out of some of the tubes as I'm going along. So that's step number one, is just to put the feet back on that came with it. I've set the system up, I've got the feet on. Now it's time to start draining the system. And to do that, I'm going to take one of these pieces of flexible hose. It's got a G1/4 fitting on one end and just open on the other end. I'm going to connect that to the bottom of the drain valve that's also happens to be at the bottom of the reservoir. That way I can just drain it into a gallon jug. So the first thing to do is take the stop fitting off, or the plug off the bottom of the drain valve. Technically you don't have to have a stop fitting on there, but I do have one just in case I accidentally open the valve when I don't intend to. I don't want fluid splashing all over the place when the system's running. So I put the hose on, I tighten it, hand tighten it. I should mention all the fittings in here are hand tightened. There's no tooling used really to tighten these fittings. At least that's the way it's recommended to be done. And I did not use anything. Everything is just tightened, finger tight. That's good and tight. Now I just need to go off and get a gallon jug and start draining the system. So now I have my gallon jug set up. I've got the hose inserted. I just need to open up this drain valve, and I expect to see pretty much absolutely nothing happen. Yeah, as I expected, I haven't taken the fill port off yet. I haven't opened anything up, so we still have a vacuum seal on the system. So not a lot's going to drain out. I really need to go get the Allen key that opens up this fill port on the top of this reservoir so I can start actually getting liquid to drain out of it. So that it will be the next step. I've repositioned the camera now to make it easier to see the water drain out. What I'm going to do now is open up the fill port on the top of the reservoir using this Allen wrench that came with the reservoir. It's nice and small, which is good because this thing's kind of tucked back in there a little bit, and with a big wrench I wouldn't be able to get it open. You're not really cranking these down too hard anyway, so as you can see, as I open it up a little bit, let a little bit of the vacuum out, start to get a little bit more liquid out. Open up a little more. Okay, let me move this a second so you can see it drain. Okay, now I will take the fill port off the rest of the way, and you can kind of tell. Okay, now I've broken the vacuum completely, and it's going to start draining out of all the other tubes in there. Start coming out of the radiator. I'm still going to have some in the bottom of the radiator that I'm going to have to deal with, but most of the tubes in the top are draining. There's still a few places where the water just kind of sits, and I have to do a little work to get it out. So what I'm going to start doing is turning the system side to side and rocking it back and forth to get the water out. And I'm going to do that in a little bit quicker motion. Okay, so I've drained some more of the water out, and interestingly enough, it turns out it's not really completely clear. As you can see, it's actually still got a slightly blue tinge. I mean, it's certainly not the color it was originally, but it's not completely clear like I thought it was. So now I need to drain some more. What I've done now is I've loosened up one of the top fittings on this pipe that leads into, it's the inlet to the radiator. And the reason why I've done that is I've noticed that it definitely is one of the major vacuum seals. So when I pop this off, I'll get a good amount of water, fluid to come out of the system. But I'm also going to use that to get the system through a way of getting the water out that I'm going to guess is not sanctioned. Still got a lot of water in the video card as well. But mostly what I'm trying to do is I've got a lot of water in the radiator, and the easiest way I've found to actually get it out, other than just turning from side to side. I'm trying here, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get much more water out this way. So what I'm going to try is something that I'm sure most people who do this for a living would say is this is something you should never do. And that's, I have the hose here. I'm going to push it up against the inlet to the radiator, and literally I'm just going to swallow and then blow out the water. And I found that this actually gets pretty much everything out of the radiator is in the best, most efficient manner possible. I've tried turning it upside down, facing it forward, facing it backwards, upside down, and I cannot get the water out of the radiator hardly at all. So what I've done here is I've it's just another one of those flexible hoses. I just push it up against it and blow through it. I'm going to do the same thing using the top pipe, although really about all this does is gets a little bit of water out of the CPU block. Really, nothing gets the water out of that video card except basically closing up the system and practically turning the system all the way to its right side. That will actually drain the water out of the video card, but blowing on it really just doesn't do the job. So at this point I'm going to button the system back up. I went and got some tap water to wet the hose, wet the O-ring, both the O-ring that's on the tube and the O-ring that's inside the radiator. So I've noticed that makes it a lot easier to get the hoses in and out rather than if they're dry. Finger tighten the connection, and now I'm gonna the last thing is just to tilt the whole system as far to the right as I can to get the water to drain out of the video card, and that's pretty much the last thing that has any fluid left in it. I just need to put the fill port back on. Now, one thing I did notice at this point, and I'm going to freeze the video here and talk over it, is that if you look in this water, it's slightly blue, but there is actually nothing in here that looks like clumps or any sort of sediment, anything that's come out that would indicate that the blue somehow coagulated or something like that. At this point, I'm thinking it just simply faded, that the blue color just faded away. The next step that I'm going to do is run some distilled water through the system, just to see if I can flush out any other blue or any other type of impurities. But to do that, I have to take the back off my system. That requires me to take off the wall mount, which is a standard TV wall mount. The reason why I need to do that is the Molex connector that powers the pump is underneath of the back. And I'm going to use an external power supply to power that pump rather than use the main power supply that's in the system. So at this point, it's just a matter of removing a bunch of screws to get to that Molex connector. The whole purpose of removing the back was so that I can get to this little Molex connector that's hiding behind the cables here on the right hand side. I'm going to disconnect it from the power supply it normally connects to and use an external power supply instead. I've got this external power supply, and the only thing I need out of it is the Molex connector, but what makes this thing work is this 24-pin jumper cable right here. You can get this any place that sells water cooling equipment. And what it does is it makes the power supply think that you have an actual motherboard connected to it. So I'm going to fish out the Molex connector that I need. Again, that's hooked up to the pump for the reservoir. It's underneath the reservoir. And I'm going to use that to pump water through while I'm doing the system flush. And that's so that I don't have to turn on the main power in case there's any leaks or any of that sort of stuff. I don't have any, there won't be any issues with causing damage to the system. To flush the system, we're just going to use distilled water. And I get it into the system using one of these bottles you find in hospitals. It's a standard fill bottle. You can also get it any place that sells water cooling equipment for computers. Turns out it's just really, really good for putting water through the tiny fill port that's at the top of the radiator. Okay, so before I can put any fluid into the reservoir, first I have to take the plug off the fill port, and then I can proceed to start filling it up. And again, it takes about 3 full reservoirs worth of water to completely fill up the loop with fluid. So this is number 1. This is the first time running water into the system. So I turn on the power supply, and the trick here is to let it run till it's about halfway empty and then shut it off, because you don't want to run the pump dry. It's a bit of an art. Okay, that was pretty good. That was a little close, but that was pretty good. So fill it up again. Kind of rinse and repeat. I filled the system up enough now that I know that it takes all of this one and about half of the next one before I have a complete loop and I don't have to worry about running the pump dry. Okay, so let's do number 2. Turn on the, well, let's not do a number 2 in the system, but let's turn on the pump. And off halfway in. This is the 3rd time, and this will complete the loop. The reservoir won't empty all the way this time. And okay, so you can see it's cycling water now. It's slowly draining because there's still a lot of air in the water. You can tell that if you look at the tubes, there's just a lot of air in there. But it looks fairly decent. Okay, shut it off, fill it back up one last time. Actually, there's a bit of dirt right there. Not much, but it's a little speck. I'm going to have to clean that out at some point. Good use for pipe cleaners, or bottle brush, I think, is what I'll use on it. So at this point, I don't expect much to happen, but it's going to take a while. It'll run, continue getting air out of the system for quite a bit. So this has been running for an hour now. Not seeing crud or anything in the reservoir. There's one speck to clean up here, but in general, it's not bad at all. And since draining this time looks exactly like it was draining the last time, it's time to start filling the system back up again. And I'm going to use the same product. I still have a full quart of this PrimoChill UV electric blue. You can see it's quite a bit more blue than what I took out. I didn't find any sediment in either what I drained out of the system or in the flush that I used with the distilled water. So you can see this is pretty blue. It matches the blue in the cables fairly well. So if you get a little closer, you can see it's not perfect, but it did match fairly closely, really. Okay, so I've got to open the second bottle. I don't have enough of the first bottle. I'm not sure I actually have enough for a third time, but then again, I'm not sure I really want to fill this up again with the same color or not. It doesn't seem to be if it starts fading. You'll notice it's sealed for my protection, which is good in case I decide I want to start drinking this. I won't get any impurities in myself. Okay, so I need about 3/4 of this bottle to fill up the system. Okay, skipped ahead. Didn't figure you wanted to watch me spend 2 minutes just pouring stuff in. So that's definitely enough liquid to fill up the system. It's about a quart. And like I said, you can see it's just much bluer than it was before. It's not the opaque stuff though. It's just dye in water. Okay, so I'm ready to go, except I did forget one thing. Now that I remembered to actually hook up the external power supply, I can fill this reservoir up for the first time. And it takes, again, about 2.5 reservoirs full to complete the loop. Okay. Watch closely. Power supply off. All right. Same thing. And it's about 2.5 to get it so it's completely primed with stuff, and it probably takes 3 full reservoirs worth before it's actually 100%. There'll be some time for it to get air out and that sort of stuff. There's a little bit of topping off required. That's why I'll run it for a while before I bother to put it back on the wall, because it's a pain in the butt to do it after the glass and everything's on. Okay. So this is number 3. So maybe it's 3.5 to get it. And If it's working as traditionally had been, this one it will actually complete the loop of fluid. So I technically wouldn't have to fill it too much more. Yeah, there we go. Got a lot of air in it, but not in danger of running it dry at this point, which is good. So I will put more in. Here's a hint. Keep the tube inside the port at all times. All right. Always watch what you're doing rather than where it's going. Now for a little bit, I'm going to let it run with the port off because I want to get some air out. And you can see there, I'm going to back it up a little bit. Don't know if you can see it, but it has definitely got a lot of air in it right now. And then I will have to do a little bit of work later. I don't know if you can't really see that. I have to get a little bit of work later because there's definitely an air pocket right here that just doesn't go away by itself. If we tilt this guy a little bit, it'll go away pretty quickly, but I don't want to do that until I have the port on there. And it's also a really good room heater in the winter. It's also a good room heater in the summer. One of those two is less desirable. So this has been running now for about an hour. It's stopped churning, so I'm not hearing a lot of air bubble noises anymore. It's dropped a little bit more, not much though. I will have to try and get this air bubble out of here, but I can't do that while that port's open. I pretty much have to do that by rotating the whole system. So I will try that. I believe I can leave it running while I'm doing it, because I think I just need to tilt it that direction. Get the air bubble to flow out. Get in. Okay, so it's over here. Alright, let's see if I can get this. I don't know if I can get a good shot of that. It's essentially this air bubble right here. Just it lays there, it won't go underneath this little gap. Okay, let's give it a shot. It was tilted. Yeah, it was this way. It's almost gone already. There we go. Probably not a good camera shot, but it's almost all gone. Alright, probably not good for the length of this cord that I had either. Yeah, it's gone. Reservoir dropped a little bit. It's not a lot. At this point, all that's left to do is put the mounting bracket and screws back in the back plate, and then get this back up on the wall and give it a good test and see what we have. And so that's what we're going to do right now. This is what the system looks like when it's back up on the wall. Kind of do a little pan over it here. You can see it's nice and blue. Not having any problem with leaks. Get a little closer here. All the air's out of it. So as far as I can tell, really wasn't as much of a mystery as I thought it might have been. What I'm guessing just happened is really that the color just faded. So in case you're curious about how it looks mounted to the wall, again, that's just a standard TV mount. I do have a couple feet on the bottom because it's so heavy that even if when I had this thing cranked down, it still would slightly over time start going a little bit off center, sag a little bit. So just to keep it nice and level so I don't have any issues like with that, I did add those feet on there. But everything seems to be all good. I guess I'll wait another 6 months or so and see if it fades again. And at that point, I'll decide whether or not I want to continue using this fluid or find myself some other coolant that I like better. My advantage here is it's been a year, and they've come out with a couple of new coolants that I might want to try. Again, still trying to want to keep away from the solids. Most people seem to still be shying away from those because the issues with them clumping up and coagulating inside of the various fins inside the GPU and the CPU. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a thumbs up if you did. Hopefully the next video I do will have something a little more exciting than just disappearing color. I do a video on actually just putting this system together from scratch. I've got a whole bunch of video. I've been editing it for quite a while. Hopefully I get that done here pretty soon. Thanks again.